I decided that I would do a tutorial on how I kind of color things. It's haphazard, but I wanted it to be quick, so I wasn't really worried about perfection. Right now I am adding the base colorant, and I'm creating a new layer. This is because whenever I color it, the layer becomes slightly transparent whenever I blend. So I chose a darker shade of the original skin tone to do the shading. I would preferably like to go between purples and reds, but I wanted to keep it extremely simple, so I did a basic shade. Right now you see me going to my FX tools and I'm clicking the gradient blur. This is extremely helpful if you need to blur a layer and you need to go fast. You can hit it several times in order to blend it out more, which is what I was doing. Now I'm going back and I am fixing some of the blur to try to fix it, but I will eventually give up on it because I knew that this is a tutorial and I didn't want it to go too long. I am adding a new layer so I could add the blushing, which is usually a red but a pastel version, and I am going to be hand blending this one because it's such a small area. Now I'm going into my brushes. There is a variety of brushes within this app that are very useful, including hair brushes and different types of material, and including glitters. But what I am looking for right now is the tool that creates multiple dots at once, which are these point brushes. There is a few here, and I was deciding which one I wanted best. I'm choosing a dark shade of brown to add freckles. Normally I would do several different shades of freckles, but as I said, I want to keep this pretty simple. This looks a lot better on a smaller scale. I forgot to add it to a separate layer and I didn't want to have to go back. I would have lightened the layer. Now it's time to go to a different layer. What I'm doing right now is I'm going to selection layer and I'm selecting the whites of the eyes. That way all the work I'm doing is not going to go outside that specific part. I'm doing the same thing as I did before. I'm going to that first bottom layer and I'm adding the first wash, and then I'm going to the layer on top to add the blurring and the darker shades. I'm used to working on a bit smaller scale with the eyes due to the fact that I made this so big, so it would be quite easy to get it handled. I'm going back to the blur tool and I am blurring those lines. With the blur tool, you can keep going over the same spot repeatedly to add a heavier blur. And now I'm going to the actual eyes, which are one of my favorite things to color, but also are a pain. So I am going to be using red for this eye color. Again, base layer, going to the top layer to add the other coloring. And remember, this is just how I do things. You can do it completely different if you wish. Right now I am changing my line work from red to black, and I am just combining those layers. Remember, if you use a clipping mask, you have to start on the top layer that's right up where the clipping mask is and clipping mask it down. Otherwise, you will lose anything that you have before that. I'm doing basic color fill-ins and fixing where it needs to be fixed. I had such a big brush and to make it smaller. Right now I'm going to be adding the shading to the mouth. At the end, you could always combine all your layers that you have in order to make it one coherent piece. Or you can leave them separate. I typically like to combine my first layer and my second layer of coloring in order to make it to where it's cohesive. And creating a new layer for the highlights, which are very simple. I'm just adding it in the eyes to make it not look like they are dead inside. Now I'm adding the shine to the cheeks wherever I made it really red. This is optional and it just gives a little bit of fluff. And now I'm adding the highlights onto the tongue itself, because your tongue is technically wet. Another detail you could possibly add is to lighten that layer in order to make it look better. And that should be the end of it. This is my signature, and I hope you enjoyed my tutorial, and hopefully my voice didn't sound too bad.